Live in a second. Hello, hello, hello. How are you, my friend?
Good, good, good. Thank you,
Good.
thank you, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm all right. It's great to have you on here. So,
Thank
just
you.
to I'll give my little introduction to the show, and then I'll give you your grandiose introduction, and then we'll move on into the interview. Then, how's that? Sound good? Legend.
Yeah.
Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to Bustart's episode 6 of I'm a Role Model. Bustart's mission is to upskill and empower 1 million women as future digital leaders and change the status quo. I'm Patrick Cutler, founder of Bustart, and I'm delighted to share with you all that I have a very special guest joining me today, Sibulele Sibaca, tuning in from Johannesburg in South Africa. How cool is that? How are you, Sibulele?
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second. I'm so
Did
sorry.
you?
Hello,
That's
hello,
fine.
hello. Thank you for having me tonight.
Welcome, welcome. You're very welcome. So,
Yeah.
allow me now to give our viewers and listeners your grandiose introduction. Okay, so you just sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. All right.
Cool.
So, Sybil grew up in Cape Town, and she lived with her parents and her older brother. It was the vigorous determination to de-stigmatise HIV and AIDS that birthed an extraordinarily powerful and distinguished young woman. Sibulele is a dynamic international speaker, social entrepreneur, and author with an amazing personal story, which we're going to hear today. Even though she lost both of her parents to AIDS, she was determined to not be a victim of her consequence. Sibu is affectionately known, has traveled around the world and consequently was headhunted by Sir Richard Branson to head up the CSI department for Virgin Group in South Africa called Virgin Unite. Sibu has addressed many international heavyweights, such as former presidents Nelson Mandela, Bill Clinton, G8 leaders, to Brad Pitt, to Alicia Keys, to Bono, to wow. She has recently addressed senators and congressmen and women in Washington, D.C. to speak to the plight of adolescent girls and young women in Africa. She has spoken at the International AIDS Conference and Women Deliver in Canada, which is the biggest conference on gender equality and health, rights, and well-being of girls and women. Sybil started her own successful businesses in property and beauty. She now lives in Johannesburg, is married with her own family, and has been running her foundation for girls for many years. On this episode of I'm a Role Model, episode 6, Sybil is going to share her amazing personal story and discuss 1, how to find and define your purpose, number 2, unleashing that purpose, and number 3, how to turn your passion into purpose. So Sybil, you're welcome, my friend. It is an absolute honor to have you on the show.
So much. Thank you so much, Patrick. Oh my word, it feels like 20 different people who've done all the things that you just spoke about now. And so it's so hard to kind of, and I guess it just really makes me so thankful to have been able to do all the amazing things. But really, when somebody else is saying it, I'm like, how old am I again?
Yeah. That's what I was wondering. When I was writing it, I was like, how old is this girl?
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. It's an honor to have you. We're absolutely delighted to have you on the show. So are you pumped and ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Good. Right. Cool. So we're going to take you back in time a little bit. Tell me about your younger days growing up in Cape Town, South Africa, with your parents and your older brother.
So I grew up with my mom, my dad, and my older brother. Life was amazing. Both my parents were educators, and fairly decent salaries meant that my brother and I could have a fairly decent upbringing. Of course, like in any society, you know, there's the upper class, middle class, and those who are living below the poverty line. But we certainly were like middle class. And even though we lived in the township, my brother and I, we really just could get access to the things that we needed. We got all the things that we needed and some of the things that we wanted, you know. So life was good. Others can consider us a little spoiled, but we had a fairly, you know, normal upbringing, went to church every weekend. School was a big deal to my parents. And so, yeah, just regular living.
Cool. Sounds good. You lost both of your parents at a young age, Sybil, and your amazing brother dropped out of school to put food on the table for you both. Would you mind sharing your personal story with us?
Sure. So I lost my mom in 1996, and you know, life was just amazing before that. Obviously, life was good until my mom fell ill in May 1996. And I remember her being sick for a very short period before she just passed on, just like that. And I remember her withering away, losing her memory, just really not being the picture of health that I'd known my mom to be for many years. And it was, of course, very confusing for me. I was a little girl. It was confusing for me. I didn't quite know what was going on. But my dad was incredible. He stepped in. He'd been there the entire time anyway, but he stepped in. It was incredible. I became daddy's little girl. I went everywhere where my dad went. He just, I was like my dad's mini-me. Made sure that my brother and I continued to go to good schools, instilled discipline. I was really well loved by my father, until year 2000. My dad fell ill, and it was a scary time for me because almost all the things that were happening that had happened to my mom were now happening to my dad, and I was just like so confused. I kept asking people, what is going on? Why is and my dad as well was suffering from the same symptoms that my mom was. So he'd also started losing a lot of weight. He started losing his memory. I didn't know what was going on, and people just kept telling me I was too young to understand. And I remember in February 24th, 2000, my father passed away. I was just a teenager, and it was just a really odd, confusing, hurtful time because I didn't know what had happened to both my parents. One moment they were here, the next moment they were gone, and our lives changed drastically like that. My dad was a very smart man, but I then later learned that he had cashed in all of our educational policies so that he could survive an extra 4 years. And I later found out in a taxi, which is like public transportation, that my dad had died from AIDS and that it had infected my mom. And when I confronted my brother about this story that I'd heard, he didn't deny it. He said, yes, that's the truth. And I guess Dad didn't want to tell you because he wanted to protect you. And I could understand. I couldn't understand it at the time, but I understand it now because I was fairly skinny growing up. And so people then started thinking that I was HIV positive. I lost a lot of friends. I lost a lot of neighbors. And so I was really stigmatized, which was really terrible for a teenage girl. But my brother stepped in and he kind of raised me. But it was a really tough time. And when I found out that my mom had been infected by my dad, it was really hard to accept that my dad, the hero, my hero, the man that promised, to be there when I graduate, be there to walk me down the aisle, be there when I've got kids and his grandkids, he'd broken that promise. And I just started learning about HIV and AIDS, and I knew that you get HIV if you've been promiscuous. At the time, it was linked with promiscuity, and I was just like, what? My dad and this HIV story doesn't match because he was a preacher at our church. So it was just really tough for me to kind of wrap my head around the whole HIV thing. And for a moment there in my life, I didn't want to belong to my family because I didn't want to belong to the HIV story.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you.
Sure.
So yeah, you lost both of your parents to AIDS. Your life was shattered. I've no doubt at the time, as you said, it switched like that. I can't even imagine the pain and suffering that you and your brother encountered. But you both really dug deep at the time, into your human reserves, and you moved forward and you got on with life, right? You got on with life. Your brother was a shining light, and in your own words, I am the woman I am today because of him. So he sounds amazing. He sounds like a friend and a brother we would all dream to have. So can you please tell us a bit more about your brother, your relationship as you grieved and navigated through life together?
So my brother is really he's like my hero. He is only a couple of years older than me, but he really stepped into the mom and dad role. As a matter of fact, I think as a disadvantage now, we don't have a brother-sister relationship. We have a mom-dad-daughter relationship.
Right.
Because he kind of switched on to the mom-dad relationship, and we've never switched it off.
Right.
It's just kind of been going the entire time. And I'm grateful that he did that. And my brother and I fought a lot because I wanted a brother, and he was adamant on being a mom and a dad.
Okay.
He just automatically knew what to do with the wayward teenage girl.
Yeah.
And he just, he sat me down this one day and he said to me, 2 things that I ask of you. 1, to not fall pregnant. 2, I want you to dream, and to dream in color. I want you to not look at our lives the way that they are now. I want you to picture and imagine the kind of world you want to live in. And he said this, I remember it was one of the darkest Christmases him and I had ever had. We had no food on the table. And it was so different to Christmases when our parents were alive. And he said to me, I need you to finish school, don't fall pregnant, and dream what you want to have in your life. And I want you to not only just see it in color, see it beautifully. And so what in essence he asked me to do that day was to dig deep, to find a future that I didn't even see.
Yeah.
He asked me to imagine it, make believe it. I didn't even know that the life I have now was even possible, but he planted the seed for me to think about it. He challenged me. He knew, because he was slightly older, he knew life could be better. I didn't. He encouraged me to read, so I got a lot of imagination going from the books I read. And I just really got to understand that there was a world outside of our current situation. Yeah. And he really encouraged that. And he was really supportive of the things that I wanted to do. He was extremely disciplined, and I'm really grateful for that discipline, because I think without it, I really would have struggled. My brother was like, he would smack me when I needed to be smacked. He was not even trying to play with me. Yeah. And really, I'm a strong, clear visionary today, because he taught me how to dream what seems to be impossible.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
He gave you vision. He gave you vision that you didn't have.
No.
You planted the seed in your head for vision, and
yeah.
you brought it back. You brought it to life.
Yeah.
And you made it happen as well. You took action. You didn't just imagine it. You actually went and did it, right?
Correct.
Brilliant. Thank you. What kind of impact would you say that your younger life experience tragedy had on shaping the amazing woman that you are today? And what skills do you think you learned from your brother's amazing leadership, care, compassion, and love as a stand-in parents?
So I think one thing that helped shape the kind of woman that I am today from what happened back then is that the world owes me nothing. My parents' responsibility was to give birth to me and to raise me to the best of their ability, but the rest was up to me. Ideally, in legal terms, they needed to be around for 18 years. They didn't live up to that promise. And so what that taught me was that sometimes life doesn't go according to plan. And when it doesn't, you've got to have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, however many plans it requires to get it right. Yeah. And it just taught me to really rely and depend on myself. Though I have a great deal of respect for partnerships and collaboration, it starts with self. It starts with you. And that's what I learned. I learned that if anything's going to happen, I'm going to make it happen. I cannot really rely heavily on anybody else to make things happen for myself. And so that's what that tragedy taught me. And what my brother taught me from his leadership was it takes teamwork to make the dream work. You know, I needed to do my part of the deal. He said I mustn't worry about putting food on the table. Some days he'll get it right and some days he won't, but that's his job. I mustn't worry about that. My job is to finish school, not fall pregnant, and dream in color. And together we created that teamwork. Brilliant. And we are both, I'd like to believe today, upstanding citizens of our country. We both went on to have our own families, disciplined individuals. We are successful in the businesses that him and I have started, and he started his own, and I've started my own as well. And that's what I learned from my brother. He kept reminding me, you're not going to be young forever. And so let's make sure that when you're older, you're living the life that you want to live. And yeah, my brother was just incredible. He was just incredible. I learned so much from him about so many small little things that kind of shaped up this person that I've become.
You had the perfect mentor, really, didn't you?
Yeah.
He was your parents, but he was also this amazing mentor, this angel that was guiding you through life, and really just kind of whispering in your ear the right things at the right time, and that kind of thing. Yeah, amazing. You finished high school, but you didn't go to varsity, as you call university. As you had no money. Did you want to go to university? And do you think, had you gone, would you have led the same pathway to your current purpose in life?
So I wanted to go to university. I know that's what my dad and my mom would have wanted me to do. I would have studied law had I gone to university. I had the knack for it. My father always said I had a big mouth and I must go speak on people's behalf in court and law. I think I would have done amazingly at it. But I wouldn't change anything about the way things happen now. I didn't go to varsity because I didn't have the money to go. But I think my parents would be okay with the way my life turned out anyway. And I'm still a big blabbermouth, and I get to travel the world and speak on behalf of the voiceless. So I think pretty much doing the same thing I would have done in varsity, only I get to travel the world while I do it and meet lots of exciting and interesting new people all the time. And I get to do what I'm most passionate about. Yeah,
and that's so important, right? The reason I asked is because a lot of people do go to university because it's kind of part of the system. And they're too young to realize, that there are alternative pathways because they haven't lived to know that might be better pathways for them. And that's kind of why I'm asking, having that hindsight of, well, my life led me in this direction because I didn't have the money and stuff and everything else. Whereas a lot of people do, and then they end up at university and then they realize it's not for them and so on and so forth. Yeah. So after high school, you joined an NGO, a non-profit organization, and this really helped to shape your pathway in life immensely. And then you met Richard Branson, who would later headhunt you to head up Virgin Unite in South Africa, which is incredible. Can you tell me about why and how you came to join in a non-profit, and how meeting Richard Branson and working for Virgin Unite changed your life?
Okay, so because I couldn't go to varsity because we didn't have any money, my brother said, look, Sibu, you've got to help me to put food on the table. And so I'd really appreciate it if you could just get a JOB, And I said, okay, cool. It's my turn now to help you out. Let me do this. The only jobs that were available at the time was with this NGO. And surprisingly, at this NGO, they were looking for a motivational peer educator. Okay. It was for an organization which was the biggest in the country at the time, called Love Life, and they were an HIV prevention organization. Mm-hmm. Now, they were asking me to be a peer educator in the very community that, because my parents had died of AIDS, assumed that I was HIV positive. Mm. The same community that had stigmatized me and really had not treated the whole HIV and AIDS part of my story very well. But the reason why I took that job was because they were paying 800 rands at the time. I think that is about, in dollars, that is about, give or take, about $70, $60
Right.
a month.
Wow.
Which is very little, but it would really help my brother so that I could get my basic hygiene things, and and so that's why I joined that organization. It wasn't necessarily because I felt like I was the best person for the job or I knew what I was doing, but because I needed to get paid. But it was so surprising that though my initial reasons for joining the organization weren't quite upstanding, when I started implementing their programs in an attempt to change young people's lives, my life started getting changed in the process. There were things I'd say to these kids in our various sessions that would challenge me, and I'd go home, I'd think about this thing. If there was homework to be done, I'd kind of apply my mind around it. And so what was really interesting is how, even though initially it wasn't meant to be for me, I was the biggest winner in that time. And what that taught me was that in discovering your purpose, you must serve.
Yeah.
You've got to serve. There's power in volunteerism, and there's so much that you learn. There's so much that you walk away with, and right there is when I discovered my purpose. I discovered what kept me up at night. I discovered that if a child could wake me up at 2 a.m. with a challenge that they were having, I wouldn't be angry. I'd be okay to engage them. And I thought, I gotta love this. And then when I was doing it, I was just really good at it, So one thing is, it was one thing to enjoy it, but like people would actually listen to what I was saying. I was just like,
what?
And then I found ways of taking my story and what had happened to me and blending it with my with the job that I had at the time.
Brilliant.
I was in a way after that. When I made that connection, when I found my purpose early on in my life and been given the platform to live out my purpose, volunteering while doing this, because that stipend was really a volunteer stipend, but paying my school fees in that manner really kind of led the pathway to where I am today.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I agree so much. Giving back is so important. Volunteering. I've done it myself with homelessness. I've done work with young kids with learning disabilities, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's the fact that you kind of introspect yourself, because you get to know yourself a lot more, and as you say, your confidence builds. And sometimes you actually get out of it more than whatever it is that you're actually helping, whatever
correct
NGO is, because you need help, and somehow that kind of reflects back to you. That greatness that you're given, and it's coming back to you in spades, and it's just an amazing thing. And I honestly think, what we're doing with BuzzStart and what we want to do in the future is, I'd really love to see cities of people where they're actually pushed to go out and volunteer in their local communities and set up social enterprises and just give back a little bit, because they'll get, we both know what you get from that process and that experience. And I think that transcends across every human being. So it's a really great thing that people should be somehow, whether it's through schools or whatever, made to go out and do that and actually give back to their communities.
Definitely.
It's such a powerful thing. So what advice, thank you very much. What advice would you give to anyone right now who's maybe struggling to find their purpose or pathway in life during this COVID pandemic, with specific reference to maybe them ideating a social cause in their local community or joining an existing NGO enterprise, and how it might help them with their skills, their pathway and purpose to employment, or maybe owning their own business or starting an NGO?
So I jotted a few things down for this one, because there's quite a few things that I'd like to raise with this is concerned. First of all, be clear about what you want. Part of our conversation tonight is about finding your purpose. It's so incredibly important to find your purpose. And the earlier you find your purpose, the better. Because you save a lot of time, money, heartache. Because the sooner you find it, the sooner you kind of solidify yourself around it. So I would say, first of all, be clear about what it is that you want to do. Pick that one thing you want to do and be an expert at it and do it well. And so I often make the example of, if you're going to sweep streets well. You don't know who's watching, you don't know who's looking, and you could sweep streets in the highest office in the country. Just do whatever you do it well. Yeah. And then the next thing would be creative. I think what COVID has taught us is that things can change in the blink of an eye. And if you cannot be creative, flexible, agile, you are going to struggle. And so no matter what it is that you were thinking of doing before COVID, thinking of doing now, be creative about it. There's more than one person thinking of doing what you're doing if they're not already doing it. Yeah. And so what is going to be your USP? What's going to be your unique selling proposition? And usually I say, don't underestimate your story, because your story is your own story. And that is what will be unique about you. And usually we don't want to tell our stories because our stories are messy. Our stories are just chaotic, and they're not, some of our stories or some parts of our stories are not great. But I usually say, the moment you own your story, no matter how messy it is, you don't know who you might be inspiring or blessing in the process. 100%. And so in this whole COVID situation, when you're trying to start a business or when you're trying to start an organization, remember, people fund and invest in people first before ideas. And so they will invest in you and your story and what you believe in long before they'll invest in your idea or your organization. So it starts with really buying into your own story and not being ashamed of it. I cannot stress that enough. For me, it was shameful. I mean, my family sat me down when I started talking about how my parents died. And they said, Sibu, we don't think this is a good idea. We don't think you should be talking about this. This is family business. I was like, hold up. It's my story. Yeah. I'm in it. So it's fine. I can talk about these people as though they weren't my parents, but I'm still the orphan here. So the story is still the same. Yeah. And so I really think it's important for people to own their story, no matter how messy it is. And of course, ask for permission for those people who are part of your story, but tell them you're going to tell the story anyway. You'll just block them out of the story. Yeah. You'll blurb them out, whatever, but it's still your story.
I love it. You're so right. I mean, you're saying so many things that resonate with me in my own journey. Find my own passion and purpose and having my own backstory and everything, and how important it is to open up to yourself, first of all, and really hack yourself first and then open up to others. And I think that's why I've created this platform as well with I'm a role model is for, women to come on and open up and tell their story, all of it, so that other women can be inspired and then they'll open up too. And that's thank you for sharing your story, and that's why it's so important. Sure. So leading on to, why is it important to introspect, hack our own mindsets, and figure out our purpose in life as soon as possible? And do you have any tips on how people can achieve this? Because it's not an easy thing to do. It took me most of my life to figure this out.
I think the first thing is being honest with yourself. You can't run away from the thoughts in your head. Yeah. You can't run away from your own reality. And so the sooner you're in touch with your reality is the sooner you can then figure out what the next steps should be. But you are not going to figure out your reality if you are dishonest with yourself and where you find yourself. I think it's very important to understand, where do you find yourself right now? Where do you want to get to? And what's the gap in between? What are the actionable steps in between that you must take? But you must have first admitted where you are. And so if it requires you to go on a short course because you don't know anything about what you want to do, or it's about calling or emailing a Patrick of this world. You've got to be clear and say, I don't know. Now, not many people want to even admit that they don't know.
Yeah.
So you've got to be even honest about that before you can even figure out that you need the help, right? Or else you're not going to get anywhere, because you're going to think you know, and then 5 years down the line, you waste a lot of time and money, because all you needed to do in the beginning is just to admit you didn't know. Yeah. And somebody would have come to your rescue. So I think that's really, really important when considering that. So yeah, that would be my one big thing around that, is really being honest with where you are will really help you. Even introspecting means being honest. Yeah. It's really as simple as that. When you're introspecting and figuring out what the next steps should be, you are being honest with where you are first. Yes. To determine what you need to do. Yeah. Don't be afraid of what you'll find when you introspect. That's the point. Yeah. You know, don't be afraid. It's okay. I mean, were we all born knowing how to drive? No. You know, were we all born knowing how to write? Read? No. These are all things that we all kind of just had to figure out, you know, and be honest and go, I don't know how to write, mommy. So you had to admit that, right? Initially, to be able to write, you had to admit, I don't know how to drive. Oh, so what do you need to do to know how to drive? You need to go to driving lessons. Oh, so it all starts from a point of being honest with yourself about your shortcomings and your inabilities.
Love it, 100%. The problem is that society is creating this fallacy where fear is very much a reality, and we look outward rather than inward, and we're afraid of that imposter syndrome and being able to open up and say, I don't know, I'm scared, I'm this, I'm that. We've created a society where it's not okay to do that, where it's not okay to introspect yourself. And that's why it's so important that we do things like this. We have these open conversations to allow other people to do it. The way I did it was personally was mindfulness, and I introspected and hacked myself through mindfulness over many years. And that's how I got to know myself and my deepest, darkest secrets. And then, you know, really changed myself from inside out. And then I was able to do stuff like this, which would never have happened in a million years. So it's absolutely brilliant advice. Thank you so much, Sibu. A lot of women will watch you and see you're very bright, you're brave, you're confident, you're authentic, you've got great confidence and self-belief in yourself. It's amazing. You're incredible. What advice or tips could you or can you give any woman on how to be just like you and shine, share their story, and become the amazing human being that they were born to be? In other words, in your words, how can they unleash their purpose to the world?
First things first, love yourself. If you think your story is messy, there's a messier story out there. Like, and by messy, I mean, you could think that you've gone through the pits of the pits, the worst of the worst. Trust me. You don't want to get to a competition about sharing stories, because you'll lose. There'll be somebody who will always have a deeper, darker, gloomier story than you. And so it's not about that. It's about owning your story initially and figuring out what you're going to do with your story. So I say, first and foremost, love yourself. Please love yourself, appreciate yourself, teach people how to treat you. They are not going to know how to treat you unless you show them how to treat you. And that is closely linked to taking yourself seriously in the littlest of things. Patrick, as you will know, I'm terrible on email. And this is what I'm trying to get right. I'm trying to take and even after years of having to be on email, I've conducted a lot of business on email. I am terrible at on emails, but this, because I know that this is a shortcoming, I've got to take that part of my life very seriously, or else I'm going to lose out on business and opportunities because I'm not willing to fix that about myself. So it's important to take ourselves seriously. Okay, then I'd also like to tell women out there to be brave. Do not be afraid to fail. In fact, when I start something new, I want to fail very quickly. I want to fail very quickly. Failing is part of my plan. I want to fail because I learned so. And in fact, when I've done that, I end up not failing.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with the result of failing should it happen. But because I do what I do diligently, and when I put my heart and mind to something, I do it really well to the best of my ability. I don't fail, but I'm okay with failing. Like I really am okay with not getting it right the first time round.
Yeah.
And I would really love for women to also get to the point where they're okay with not getting it right the first time round. Don't put pressure on yourself. This is a journey. And if you're trying to get into something new, allow yourself time to figure it out. There'll be parts that will work and some parts won't work. Self-doubt has been the biggest killer of dreams. And so self-belief is so incredibly important.
Yeah.
You've got to believe that you're going to get it right, but also be okay if you don't get it right, and don't think you're a failure because of that. I really started unleashing my truest potential when I started believing in who I am.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, if I may just link a personal story to this, is that it's along the lines of how I met Richard Branson. I'd been speaking, where I met him was a speaking engagement I'd been invited to, and it was the biggest audience I'd ever spoken in front of, before then, right? At the time. And I was so scared.
Yeah.
I was doubting everything about myself and my story. All of a sudden I went blank, but I got on stage, and the moment I got on stage, there was this really nice man in the audience. He kept nodding and smiling. And if you know anything about you'll know a lot about public speaking. You'll always try and find that friendly face in the audience who kind of just puts you at ease.
Yeah.
And so Richard did that for me, which was really amazing. He of course, at the time, I didn't know who this gentleman was, right? And after I finished speaking, I got a standing ovation. It was really, really touching and sweet. And this man comes up to me. And of course, I recognize him because he'd been quite nice to me the entire time.
Yeah.
And he says, "Thank you so much for what you've just done, for your speech, really inspirational. I'd love to offer you a job."
Wow.
I looked at this man, Patrick. Yeah. He didn't look like the kind of man who could offer me a job. He looked a little frazzled.
Yeah.
And I thought, ooh, I know all about human trafficking.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be human trafficked to Europe. I'm good.
I'm not available.
I'm not available for that. I'm all right here in South Africa. I'm okay earning my $60 a month.
Brilliant.
I'm good.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, if you ever change your mind, here's my card. Call me." Took that card, threw it away. 2 days later, the CEO calls me and asks me, "Sibu, I saw that you had been speaking to this gentleman after you finished speaking. What did he want from you?" And I'm like, can you imagine the nerve? Trying to recruit me at a youth event. Really, this guy wanted me to go work for him. And I was like, no thanks, And he's like, "Sibu, do you know who that was?" I'm like, "No, and I don't care." He's like, "Sibu,
I don't care.
do you know who that was?" And I was like, "No, but I'm starting to worry that I should have known who it was." And he says to me, "Well, that was Richard Branson." I was like, there's only one. It's got to be another Richard Branson that I met, because it can't be that one, because he wouldn't. I wouldn't have said no. It was really a terrible time for me because I had turned down Sir Richard Branson's job offer for $60, doing what I absolutely loved, and I didn't even know what he wanted me to do. But my self-belief and just zero doubt made me believe that whatever's meant for me will always come for me.
Yeah.
And I must just be, in the meantime, preparing myself for greatness. So when greatness comes, I'm ready to take it on. Yeah. And a month later, Richard calls, tells me how hard I am to get a hold of, and and says he'd love to invite me to the G8 summit in Edinburgh.
Wow.
And that is how I ended up going to Edinburgh, and that's how I ended up. I mean, I then obviously confronted him afterwards as I was about to leave, and I said to him, "You offered me a job a month ago, and I turned it down. Is that job still available?" And he said, "Yes, it is." And I asked him, "So what would you have me do?" And he said, "I don't know. You choose. You can do whatever you want."
Yeah.
And I knew at the time that he had Virgin Unite, and I said, "I'd really like to work at Virgin Unite." And he said, "Well, it's new, and I'd love for you to run with it in South Africa." And I said, "Sounds like a plan." And that's what I ended up doing. And, you know, just going back. So really believing in yourself will open up opportunities that you don't even think or feel you deserve. Yeah. And that's where it starts. And then lastly, what I'd say to women is partnerships and collaboration is the key to go. Ask for help. No man is an island. There's a lot you can achieve on your own, but to go the long haul and to be sustainable, it's partnerships. Pretty much like what you and I are doing right now. Yeah. You and I don't know each other, but you and I met on a social media platform, and we could tell that we are about the same thing. We have the same passion and drive, and this is how and this is what we have now. Yeah. We don't know what this relationship might bring about in the future, but certainly it's about putting in the hours, putting in the time, putting in the effort, and collaborating and partnering. And that way we are going to get so much further as women.
I love it. Yeah. 100%. Everything that you've said. First of all, to touch on failure, I think you probably find in some countries in the world that word doesn't even exist in their dictionary, and you find that, you know, for certain words, and I think it shouldn't exist in its terminology definition, because it's not what we've been taught to believe that it is.
Right.
We learn. We don't fail. We learn. We fall down and we get up and we learn.
Love it.
We try stuff and we learn, you know.
Absolutely.
We're always learning. You know, we make mistakes, whatever. We never fail. You can't fail. I don't think it's possible to fail, because anything that you ever do as a human being, you will evolve and you will get stronger and more confident.
Agreed. I love that. I've just stolen that. That's my line now.
Yeah, you work away.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brilliant. And then the other thing that you were on about as well was so powerful. For women, is that you need to step outside your bubble, your fear, your barriers, your you know, get out of your house, get out of your room, wherever it is that you're really holding yourself back, because only will you find the magic when you actually put yourself out there. You were on a stage doing your thing, getting your $60. You were loving life. You know, you were terrified, but you were loving what you were doing because you were so passionate about it. But you would never have met Richard Branson had you not been on that stage at that particular time. And so on and so forth. And those kind of sequential stages in life happen because you have a mindset, first of all, that you've created, which is amazing, and self-belief and confidence and all these things that you need to work on and introspect and hack yourself. But then you've put yourself out there, you've put yourself out in the world where people can see you, they can hear you, they can connect with you. And that is so important, because if you're not out there and you're not talking and you're not being seen or heard, then you will never ever evolve or grow. And you know that's
so
just amazing. Amazing story, and thank you for sharing it. So it kind of leads on to this question. Speaking in public is the number one fear in the world. I know personally myself, from having anxiety most of my life, social anxiety. It took me, you know, most of my lifetime, or my adult lifetime, to really work on myself to get to a place where even right now, speaking to you on a camera, on a live video. In fact, this is a very new thing in the last few months. You know,
Yeah.
working up to talking to more than two people at the same time, then working up to standing on in a classroom, to standing on a stage to thousands of people, to then me actually on live on a camera, which is a whole different mindset in itself. So, you know, I'm evolving, my journey's growing, I'm getting over my anxiety and all of that. So how important is it for anyone really today to overcome their fears and their barriers, stop holding themselves back and get out of their own way, especially when we live in this digital storytelling and video-driven social media world?
Oh, Patrick, that is a difficult one to answer, because I've been doing this for over about 20 years now, and still doesn't get any easier.
No. No.
So when people expect me to say, "Oh no, don't worry, practice makes perfect, you'll be fine," no.
No.
So I'm sorry to be the party pooper here, but and the reason for that is that your audience is always different. And so if you respect your audience, you'll always be nervous about the way that you'll come across.
100%.
And it doesn't matter if you're speaking to 6-year-olds, who are really hard to impress, by the way.
Hard work.
Yeah, hard work. Or you're speaking to presidents of countries. Yeah. It's really, really hard. And of course there are a few things that you can. It's speaking about public speaking in particular. There are certain skills you can learn to kind of manage the anxiety and be better at presenting your story without coming across like a nervous wreck. But you'll still be nervous. And so it's about managing all the feelings and emotions around it. So for example, what I do that really helps me is the day before my speaking engagement or my webinar, conference, whatever it is, I imagine the entire thing in my head first. Yeah. So that when it actually happens, I'm living it out for the second time. Yeah. And so it doesn't make me as nervous. I'm a lot calmer. I've spoken through my responses. I have an idea of what I want to say. And for a very well organized webinar, conversation, conference like you and I are having, conversation like you and I are having now, you sent me a couple of these questions earlier on. I had an idea of what they were looking like. I answered them in my head first so that I could have a much easier flow in a conversation, as opposed to thinking about stuff the first time around. So obviously planning is critical. So it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. Planning is incredibly important. And what do they say? The 7 Ps. Proper prior planning prevents pitiful poor performance. And so this is like the holy grail of public speaking, or even putting yourself out there as a digital entrepreneur. Planning is important. You and I planned this conversation. We made sure that the tech was working for us to have a smooth conversation like this. It just doesn't happen if you think it's going to happen. Like it doesn't. You know, you've got to plan these things out. And so like with anything, like I said, whether it's public speaking, putting yourself out there, telling your story, owning your story, starting a business, starting an NGO, even being a digital entrepreneur and being based in the digital space, you have got to plan this thing. And what it does is that it calms you down, it calms your anxiety. You're able to, in planning, you can anticipate what can go wrong. You're never fully in tune with what really does go wrong on the day eventually. I mean, you and I could still have a tech problem right now, even though we plan for it.
Don't say that.
But you can mitigate a lot of the things if you've planned for it. And so yeah, that would be my answer to that, around how do you get yourself ready to not only speak I mean, I get a lot of people asking me to teach them how to speak. And I believe it's a skill that everyone can wrap their fingers around. It just takes time, planning, and dedication. And people must understand that you never stop being nervous. Ever.
No. Love it.
Yeah.
You have to, it's a brilliant point. You have to be human. People need to be more human and less full of shit.
Yeah.
to be completely blunt, and acting through their life.
Yeah.
They have to go back to their inner selves, their child,
Yeah.
inner child, and start being themselves again and being human and being open. Anxiety is very much an emotion that we all have. It's part and parcel of being human, and I see it as a superpower now.
Absolutely.
Without anxiety, I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you, doing this. I wouldn't be running my business. I wouldn't, like,
Yeah.
I do Google classes every month, and I'd be terrified, even though I know the stuff inside out and outside in. And everybody tells me every time how great I am at speaking and training and all this. It doesn't matter. I'm still terrified before it. After it, I have to lie down.
Yeah.
It's only an hour
Yeah.
class because
Yeah.
I'm just completely, wiped of energy, and
Yeah.
it's just zapped me because I've
Yeah.
taken so much out of myself preparing
Yeah.
and thinking about it and overthinking it and everything else. But if I didn't have that, then my performance, my delivery, my planning, my strategy, my helping people would not even come close to what it is if I didn't have that superpower. So I think that's so important. Thank you. Tell me about your Foundation for Girls, the mission, and what are your dreams and aspirations for other girls and women around the world?
So, bottom line for the foundation, I want the girls and the young women who come on the foundation to be economically empowered.
Brilliant.
I discovered that when I was economically empowered, I was able to make my own decisions. It's so hard to be a girl or a young woman and be economically dependent on somebody else. Because your decisions, no matter how informed they are, because we are talking stomach politics, will always be, you always try to align yourself with the person who's providing for the stomach politics. And sometimes that alignment is not always to your advantage as a girl or young woman.
Sure.
In South Africa, there are plenty of stories around the extent to which girls and young women will go just to put food on the table. And so my biggest thing is, if I can get girls economically emancipated, then they're able to make the decisions that they want to make. So, for example, not simple, but things like practicing safe sex. I don't encourage or discourage girls from being sexually active. However, if you're going to be sexually active, I'd like you to be able to negotiate condom use. How do you negotiate condom use? If you're coming from a position of power. If you don't have that power, then you're most likely going to lose, which means you're going to have sex without a condom. And then you're going to become one of 1,200 girls here in South Africa who contract HIV every week. Yeah. And so I want us to look at the driving factors of what leads a girl child to being that statistic. Yeah. And so on the foundation, our core business on the foundation is to teach girls how to be economically independent. Right. We encourage them to start businesses. We give them small seed funding for them to start their businesses. We expect them to pay it back. We align them with mentors. Right. I've got girls ages 13, 14, 15, 16, 21, 22, starting and running their own businesses. And they're not making a lot of money, but they're making enough money to put food on the table and take care of themselves and their families. We have a lot of child-headed households here in South Africa. And so, like my brother and I used to be. And so it's very important that we give them information is one thing. You can tell young people, don't have sex unprotected, don't have sex at all. But if you're not giving them tangible opportunities to get out of that situation, then you're not helping. And so I remember with me, the moment I got independent financially was the moment my life changed. And that's what I want for girls and young women in South Africa.
Brilliant. I love it. Amazing. Thank you. So sadly, we're going to have to wrap up this amazing interview, which has been incredible. You're really inspirational. You're an amazing person. So thank you very much. Before we leave, what 3 golden nuggets of advice would you give your younger self, Sibu, if you could go back in time and plant those in your younger self's brain? It's always a good question.
It is a good question. I didn't think about this one. So what would I tell my younger self? Sure. The first thing I tell my younger self is, I'm not my parents' story. Mm-hmm. I'm my own story. Brilliant. For a long time, I carried the burden of being an AIDS orphan. Mm. And perhaps it shaped my narrative, but I don't think I should have carried that burden for as long as I did. Yeah. So I would have said to really, don't carry my parents' story. Secondly, I'd forgive a little more. Yeah, love it. I had a tendency of holding grudges because I was confused and I was hurt. Yeah. And I didn't forgive my parents for a long time, long after they died. Yeah. I had questions. They failed me. Yeah. And I didn't forgive them and family members whom I expected to have been there for my brother and I, and they weren't. Mm-hmm. And I think, if they say not forgiving somebody is like drinking poison and expecting them to die. And I think it really could have affected my life badly had I just hung on to that, betrayal, as I would have called it. And so to forgive a lot quicker and a lot sooner. And even now, actually, to even go back to certain people and go, I forgive you. It's okay. Like, I expected you to be around at the time, but now I understand. And I haven't gone back to those people. So I think even to my current self, it's to be able to forgive a lot quicker. And then lastly, I tell my younger self, because of my betrayal and because of my burdened self, I didn't believe in a lot of people's goodness. There are good people out there, and they are angels. And for every bad person there's also a good person. Yeah. And some of them really just want to help you along your way. Yeah. Some of them want nothing in return. And I've met a lot of these people. Some I've disappointed because my younger self didn't believe in myself when these people believed in me. Yeah. I disappointed them. I didn't quite live up to what they had expected of me in my life. And also I just didn't trust them. I wasn't believing of that. Could people be this good to me? Yeah. And the truth is, people can be. Yeah. And it's to believe it when it happens to you. You deserve it. You are worth it. And just to be a little more trusting and open. Of course, there are boundaries to everything, but believe that there are good people in the world. I think had I believed that a lot earlier in my life, I would have gotten perhaps a little further and I would have made great contacts, but I didn't. Instead, I disappointed a lot of people along the way that I would also love to go back to today and be like, thank you for seeing what I didn't see in myself at the time, but thank you for showing me that I was worth it when I didn't believe it. So yeah, those are the 3 nuggets I think I'd tell my younger self, that I think had I practiced those things back then, I mean, I don't know if my life would be better now, but certainly I think it would have made me a much happier person back then too. Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Life's a journey. It's a learning journey. Yeah. Some people never get to realize these things or introspect themselves. They don't know how to introspect themselves. So the fact that you're even come this far and being able to, forgive people and think about it even is a massive step in your journey of life. I've done it and it's really helped me over a massive hurdle. And as you said as well, like going back and speaking to those people or just forgive them in your head. Either or works, and it's a massive hurdle that you need to get over, and everyone should do it.
And I think, if I may, forgiving yourself too.
100%. Yeah.
So if, like you say, you may never go back to them and tell them you forgive them. forgive yourself for not being the right person back then. Forgive yourself for things that you should have done differently and didn't quite, because now you know better, and forgiving yourself in the moment, I think also relieves and releases a lot of tension from yourself.
Every new day presents a new chance, right?
Yeah.
And that's it, and that's the way you should think, and keep moving forward. So brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. You're an incredible human being. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure to meet you, to talk to you, to hear your story. I've no doubt we're going to grow this as big, as wide as we can. I've no doubt that you've helped many thousands, if not millions, of women in the future, beyond today. So to let our wonderful audience know as well, whoever's tuned in or who's watching this later, Sibu will be taking over the Bustard Academy Instagram account from tomorrow until Tuesday, which is pretty cool. Thank you so much. You're a legend. So please follow Instagram, Bustard Academy. Please tune in, engage with Sibu as she shares more of her incredible story of how she's overcome adversity to become the amazing woman and leader that she is today. So also, just to finish off, Bustard will be launching our 12-week digital entrepreneur leadership course next month, hopefully, in partnership with the UK government. And it's really designed to help fast track women into full-time employment and also the gig economy. So the reason I'm saying that, Sibu, is a large part of the program I put together is around NGOs, what we call community interest companies or social enterprise. And when we do get up and running, it would be amazing if you're up for it, if you would come on and speak to the group and, help them a little bit with, how do we set this up? How do we do this? Their mindset, things like that. It would be really incredible to have you on board for that.
Definitely. I'm here for it.
Legend, my friend. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
I've taken up enough of your precious time, because time is precious, and you are a legend. And I hope we'll connect and we'll keep connected. And as you said earlier, who knows where this will lead? We just don't know. And it's about connecting with people, amazing people, and just see where it goes. So it's over now from us, guys. Wherever you are, thank you very much, and take care and good night. Thank you very much. All right, my friend. Take care. Bye.
Bye.